Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Jared Brandon.
It is me, Todd Novak, and we've got a very special guest calling in on the magical Skype right now.
Yeah, hey, it's Matt Nowicki from Red Rocket Guitars.
Red Rocket Guitars out of
North Carolina, USA.
And I can prove that because he was, well, because he said it. That should be proof enough. But he was just on the phone, and he was outside, and there was birds chirping and stuff.
It sounded like a nice, warm summer day.
Yeah, I'm pretty rural out here, to be honest. Nice. I'm kind of out in the countryside. I'm outside Winston-Salem, but, you walk outside my front door, and there's cows to one side. I got a little frog pond. And
that's awesome.
Little birdies and stuff. It's nice.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I moved from Southern California, the beach areas, and went to Minnesota, and I just completely fell in love with being closer to nature.
Yeah.
Because you're immersed in it, just like I'm sure you are right there. And now we're in Columbus, and there's nature around us, but you have to work a little bit harder for it.
I actually was brought up more in the northern country, so.
Yeah, you mean like Canada?
No, not that north. I did live in Michigan for a while, and
Nova Scotia.
Yeah. And then northern Ohio. So, 2.5 hours north, and I come down here to Columbus 10 years ago, and people are you from the north? And I'm like, just 2.5 hours. Jeez, oh Pete's.
Yeah. Well, it's stuff like that that's where people say "Geez, oh Pete's."
All right.
Well, I guess you're right. 2.5 hours makes a difference.
Drawl kind of a thing going on.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we're really excited to have Matt here, and we'll get into why he's here. I mean, if you're on here, obviously you're involved with guitars, but more so like how did we find him, and why are we interested in talking with him? First, we're gonna just spend a little bit of time on learning what we are into this week for guitar stuff. Jared, why don't you hit us first?
Oh man, a couple episodes ago we had Mike in with Red House Electronics. I gotta tell you, I was really impressed with his pedals. I was impressed with his backstory, and I really liked. I got to use his pedals before we did the podcast, and I kind of fell in love with his tremolo pedal, which is called the Heatwave. So along with that 50-watt Bassman that I acquired, this pedal and the Red House Electronics Heatwave pedal and the Fender Bassman early 70s, they're just married in, and they just sound great together. So I've been messing with that, and I've been really enjoying it. So, Mike, thanks, man. It's a great product you have, and I'm really happy I bought it.
It looks cool too. It's black and yellow. It's the textured black, which
it's got
I like.
A cactus on it, and I mean
that's why I
does.
kept calling it the Sonora because I'm an idiot.
Well, it's called the Heatwave, and I learned about cactuses too. So whenever I see the cactus on the pedal, I think of my time in Arizona when I learned about them. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
So that's what's going on with me, and just really enjoying my new pedal. And I'm not a big pedal guy, but I am now. Especially getting into this
fair
podcast.
Amount of pedals, man.
Yeah, and now, doing this podcast with Todd here, it's kind of piqued my interest with pedals, and I'm happy.
Good. That Matt, I'm not sure if how familiar you are with Red House Electronics. He's a smaller brand, but he's Ohio based, and so we just had the episode with him, and I think something really interesting, and I'm going to make the assumption that you could probably like relate at some level, being a smaller builder.
Sure.
A boutique builder, but he had such a great backstory on how he came about the naming the pedals and the idea of the pedals. He's American Indian, And so he had all these really fantastic stories about how he tied them. You know, one of them was named after his grandfather. You know, it's this latest one. His latest one called the Eagle Feather is you know, this really positive thing in their culture, and it's just really cool and wicked smart kid too. You know, he came in and he's like $105, but he's about 6'4", and he's a full-time engineer.
Oh wow!
Electrical engineer. And he's getting a master's in it as well. I think a master's in it. It's like, wow, you're actually really smart. You're not just building pedals because it's a cool thing to do.
Yeah, right. the way he communicates, you wouldn't know. And I'm not trying to insult him, but you wouldn't realize he has all this education going on unless you ask, because he's so down to earth.
Yeah, he's
when he
really
talks
chill
about his stuff.
Anyways, for any listeners who haven't heard that episode, I believe it's episode number 38, and it's featuring Mike Trumbley of Red House Electronics, and it's really good. And he's now considered a close and personal friend, as are and everyone that we interview, including Matt. And I don't want to butcher your name.
I knew his best friend.
You have is that like a Polish background name? What's the?
It's a Polish name. I think it was originally something along the lines of Nowicki. Probably the generation before my grandfather, and you know the Ellis Island guys turned it simpler and just went to Nowicki.
Yep.
And that's where it's at.
All right. So. Well, I guessed right. I get a trophy.
Yay!
So Matt,
it's simpler than you think. Everybody adds a Z or an R or something like that. It confuses me, but yeah.
So it just that kind of reminded me of George from Seinfeld, who anytime he had to make up a name was like Mr. That's right. So Matt, why don't you tell us about what's going on in your guitar world this week?
My guitar focused situation right now. I've been messing with this idea for a while, and I'm always trying to. I get ideas every now and then and try to get them to actually get up and out. And this one has been bugging me for a long time. I drew up this nice design for like a match, you know, something along the lines of a 335 semi-hollow, but you know, something a little bit more interesting. You know, do maybe a little bit of Gretschiness in there as well, and you know, and messing with some, you know, a little bit longer scale and a couple other things, and it's just been just back and forth, and I finally knocked out a couple of prototypes this week, so I was all proud of myself.
Nice.
So it should be interesting.
That's killer. And that's something that I want to get into a little further in as we actually start to get into the core of our interview with you. The whole process part is what, you know, we always find terribly interesting. So as for me, I bought a new pedal kit from Mammoth this week, so I was super excited about that. I'm not a pedal builder as far as like, you know, I'm going to make like 10 of them or anything, but I really enjoy the process. I love just putting the things together, and I'm a designer. Arguably, the funnest thing I get to do is figure out what this thing's going to look like. So I got a really cool idea for what this could be called, and I don't know. Who knows? If I like it, I will put my own twist on the actual electronics, so as not to just make it, you know, the stock product. I rarely leave anything stock, and then I'll post it up and see what kind of response I get, and maybe make a couple more. Who knows?
Cool.
But so that's always fun when you're waiting for those packages to come in the mail.
There you go.
And Mammoth has been, they've hooked me up with some pretty great stuff as far as pedal kits and stuff go. Anybody who hasn't tried to build a pedal before and are interested, the worst thing that's going to happen is that you do it wrong.
Yeah.
Go for it. Just try it. It's a ton of fun.
Yeah, I've never been that into pedals. You know, I messed around a little bit with it, but you know, I'm amazed at just the explosion of the pedal thing going on in the last couple of years. It's just it's just gone crazy.
Yeah. Well, and
there's so many small builders, and there's so many different things going on.
The internet, in my opinion, has
give
opened
us your
that
opinion
up.
On the internet.
I am just going to blurt it out. Well, yeah, of course, it's given everybody an opportunity to get into whatever they want and learn. There's so much information out there to learn how to do it.
True.
So everybody's taking advantage of that, and that's and not only that, suppliers are taking advantage of that as well, and it's getting well known. Facebook groups.
I just saw a little "the more you know" rainbow up higher before.
That's exactly what's happening, man. Dun, 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 dun. I love that thing, man. That's old school. Yeah, but that's what's going on. There's going to be more and more.
Well, it's an accessible thing to do. It's like if you have a passion about something, and ours is guitar stuff. It is. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a guitar player who doesn't want to build their own guitar. Mm-hmm. That is obviously a much bigger process, a much more difficult. There's a lot of stuff going on with building a car. Just slap the board together and put some strings on it. Although you can, and those are rad too. But pedals are great to get into simply for the reason that you can, pardon the pun, you can express yourself very, very easily. And you have this thing that you're able to claim as yours that is probably only a little bit different than somebody else's, but you still got to make it yours, and you got to go through the process, and it's a way to keep your hand deep in the pot of the guitar community.
Yeah,
and it's cheap. It's like
that's not. It's a lot cheaper than doing like an amp kit or something. It's
I do want to do one of those someday though. That sounds like a. Have you built one of those, Matt?
I've got my eye on one, and just haven't found the time. But I've been messing around with a bunch of amps, and I'm kind of thinking I want to get into some kits and start designing some stuff with that. Just kind of the same way I did guitar. So
I also looked into that, and I called a place, and they said, "Oh, well, if you've never done it, you want to start with the Tweed or something real simple.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't want to start with a Marshall." They said, "You kill yourself."
Right.
And I said, "Okay." And that kind of deterred me away from doing it. But I'm a little interested in that as well. It'd be nice to have my own amp.
I actually got a little. The internet makes you know just enough to be dangerous, and so I started looking into little conversions and stuff of old tube amp pieces, like the old tube amps from the organs, like the Hammond organs everybody would have in their living room in the 60s. And there's tons of that stuff just lying around. You can find, basically a chassis with all the parts in it for about $50 on eBay. And just if you knew what you're doing, you switch a few things around, it sounds good with guitars. And, things like the old film projectors from schools, they got little tube amps in them, which sound really, really cool if you know what you're doing, how to tweak them up. And the more I looked into that, every now and then you get somebody on one of the YouTube videos how to do it. I said, now be careful. You touch this here, you touch that there, and you'll die. So just,
Yeah, if you start one of those, you got to have 911 close by.
Right. So I never quite knew enough to be confident I wasn't going to kill myself. So I'm still working on that.
That's the same reason I don't try to put in ceiling lights in my home.
Right.
Exactly. It's just not worth it to me.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, anybody who has heard the last couple episodes know that we have started a new feature called 4 on the Floor. And I did offer this up to Matt, and also gave him an out in case he's not a pedal guy, because hey, everybody's not a pedal guy. I get that. So respectfully, we're going to give him a pass, especially because he's busier making pretty amazing guitars than he is fiddling around with pedals. So
sadly, that's the truth.
Jared's waving a piece of paper at me.
I have a 4 on the floor thing.
Well, no, you can't. You're not the guest. You gotta wait. That episode is coming. We're gonna do all the knobs 4 on the floor.
I'm ready for it too, man. I've had mine for a while.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
All right, Matt. So I'm gonna give the people that are listening. Golly, we are so glad you're listening. All the peoples in the worlds out there in the over 80 countries that are downloading us, we're super, super happy that you're doing it. So anybody who has listened, I've said this a million times. I'll just say it 1,000,001 times. I'm addicted to Instagram. I'm not addicted. Well, maybe actually I kind of.
It is addicting.
I'm addicted to Instagram.
It sucks you in. Yeah.
It does. It's visual candy. It's knowledge candy, and it always leads you somewhere great. Usually, 99% of the time, it leads me somewhere great. And one day in particular, I followed a Instagram sort of back trail and landed on just some gorgeous guitars, and I said, holy moly, what is this all about? And found out about Red Rocket Guitars and said, well, I mean, there's no way I'm not going to have this guy on the show. Got in contact with Matt and been trying to set this up for a little while. I'm just thrilled to talk to you because you are clearly a solid craftsman, and I think that it goes a long way in the guitar community. Anybody who is not familiar with the Red Rocket guitars, please go check that out. You can go to the website, which Matt will, I'm sure, say in a minute here. Obviously, on Instagram, it's really easy eye candy to chew on there. So, Matt, what would you say, just to start us off, and then I'll get into your actual story. I'll ask you about your story, but how would you characterize your general take on your general approach to guitars, so that anybody who's driving has a sort of visual picture in there? Well, all pictures are visual. A picture in their mind of what these are like.
I'm trying to go for something that's got a little bit of a classic feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Got a lot of reference. It looks like what people think a guitar should look like generally. It's a little bit recognizable, but it's got a lot of details that make you stop and look twice. And some of the visual stuff, some of the colors and finishes, and the wood, and one of the big things about my stuff, I really don't like to make the same guitar twice. It's not. I don't like making 10 of a particular model and maybe just a different color or something like that. It's just not that interesting for me. So I'm always kind of trying to find something a little bit different to throw in the mix to make it fun.
That's pretty solid, Jared.
Yeah, I like that concept. When I look at your guitar, I see a lot of the same, the binding. I love that binding that you use. It's very eye-pleasing. And a lot of your guitars use that sparkle, too, that sparkle finish.
Yeah, I like the sparkles.
Goodness, I love that, man. I particularly love Speedboat Sparkle, man.
Don't take the frosting off the cake just yet there, pal.
I can't help it, man. It's just, how can you not? It's so good.
I think, Matt, you summed it up pretty well. They are classically based shapes, but you nailed it when it's like, when you look at it, you kind of look away and then you're like, wait a minute. And then you look back and you're like, oh man, ooh, look, ooh. So you've taken something that is familiar and made them quite special.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Red Rocketized.
Yeah, and I wanted to. I mean, I started out. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but I started out.
Yeah.
I got an art. I went to art school, and of course, that's a fantastically lucrative way to make a living, and with a sculpture degree in pottery and ceramics and all of that. So that went well.
Yeah.
But ended up in advertising and all that kind of stuff. But I started out and I really wanted to do creative stuff, and I didn't want to. I had some dealers and stuff who, when I started doing this, they wanted to order 10 or 15 of the same kind of thing, and it didn't quite work out, and I'm glad it didn't. And I just, I want to keep doing that thing where I'm kind of working working through an idea, and it kind of turns into another idea, and kind of keeps leading me somewhere where I want to keep going back and doing it. You know, I don't really want to turn into a little, you know, mini factory.
Exactly.
It's almost, you know, looking for that little twist that's going to make it something fun.
Let's get into how you landed here. I want to take one step back, and I always love to hear how people got into guitar. Could you give us just a little bit of backstory on that?
Well, I mean, probably like just about most 100% of other male guitar players, I started picking it up, you know, when I was younger and early teens and stuff, and it was fun and cool, and I loved music, and you know, I got to the point where I was relatively good. I wouldn't ever say I was a great player, but you know, I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Who was your influences back then?
You know, I always loved the bluesy stuff. I grew up in Chicago, south side of Chicago. You know,
okay. Cool.
So I was actually an extra in the Blues Brothers.
What? Really?
Yeah. I can't even pick myself out. I don't even know where. But I was in. It was the scene with Ray Charles outside the pawn shop.
Yep.
You know, where everybody in the street is dancing and being crazy.
Yeah.
So I was one of the 12-year-old kids just running around screaming. That was about it. So
that's awesome.
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
Oh, man, I love that movie.
Yeah. I used to, we used to go down to Maxwell Street on Sunday mornings to these, these grungy old diners and have biscuits and gravy.
Nice.
You know, and there'd be
gravy.
Yeah. It was cool. So loved the bluesy stuff. I mean, I was late teens when Stevie Ray was just really starting to come up and out, and in fact, I was, I remember I was going to go to his last concert at Alpine Valley when he crashed in the helicopter. I wasn't, somehow I didn't go, but I remember that night when he crashed. So.
Wow. So what did that? I mean, he was a big influence. How did that affect you? Did you spin off into another artist, or did you hang tight to him?
I liked all that kind of stuff. I really did like the the old stuff. Muddy Waters was like about 2 or 3 miles away from me. He was living in the suburbs when I was out in the suburbs in Westmont, Downers Grove, just outside Chicago, and all those kind of guys, Muddy Waters and John Lee Hooker and all the old chess guys, and I love that simple, cool little tunes.
I'm assuming you've watched Under the Influence. Can I?
Which one is that?
With the Keith Richards documentary?
No, I haven't. I haven't yet. No.
Oh man. Man. That is a must for you. That is he actually goes back and he goes up to Muddy Waters' house and all that business.
Mm-hmm.
It's I mean, pretty much he's just driving around your old neighborhood, it sounds like.
Yeah, probably.
It's and it's interesting. Anybody that hasn't watched Under the Influence, it is not about his escapades in the dark arts of rock and roll. It is about his influence, the things that influenced him, and that how greatly he was influenced by American musicians, and it is just outstanding. So I encourage anybody who hasn't listened to it, even if you're not like a blues fan, it's so good. Well, that's a pretty solid guitar background to have, I'd say.
Yeah. And I really did like all kinds of stuff, because when I first started learning, I was doing trying to do a little bit of classical stuff, and my uncle is he's a heavy duty classical player and heavy duty almost bop, freeform, jazzy type stuff on the guitar, and he's just kind of hyper intellectual jazz that is just, you got to really sit and think about it. And so I took some lessons from him, and so I love that kind of stuff. And like I said, I was never great, but I loved the music. So
I feel like there's a huge resurgence of maybe not very young, that would mean they were teens or whatever, but younger, really accomplished players, especially on Instagram.
yeah, it's crazy.
You constantly uncover something, you're like, oh, I wonder what oh my gosh, I quit.
Yeah, I know.
Let me ask, what was your first guitar that you've ever had, that you ever owned, and how did you get it?
That I ever owned, it was just an absolutely terrible little no-name acoustic that I think I bought for like $20 from a friend at school that he probably found in his attic. It had the action was probably about 2 inches high, and I didn't know any better. And
it got your fingers nice and calloused up.
Yeah, it really did.
Yeah.
And it was just terrible. It was terrible, but it was fun. And I can't remember the next one I got after that. I started, this was way before the internet, and in high school they'd have those little local penny saver, trading post.
I remember the penny saver. That was the only way you could get the dang. Yeah.
Right.
Or you'd just look in the classifieds in a newspaper.
Exactly. So I'd scour those, and I'd save up my, my after-school job money. And by the time I was 17, I had a early 70s Tele thin line, which was really nice, a cool Strat. I had a Les Paul Black Beauty, which was gorgeous. And a couple of cool amps and a fun little bass, an old, a little Fender short scale bass. And,
that's not bad for early on. That's a lot of gear.
I know. I wish I still had them. They're gone, and I stupidly, I think I traded 2 or 3 of those. I sold the Les Paul to my girlfriend's younger brother, and I think he actually still has that. So
you need to get that back.
Good on him. I don't think he's going to give it back.
No.
So you got in. You had an early blues experience. You got a nice little pile of equipment going on now. What's your next move? Where did you go from there?
Well, that's how it kind of got crazy. I mean, I went to college. Did the art thing, and just about right after, the summer after I graduated college, I went off to be a camp counselor at a summer camp, and ended up meeting somebody from the UK and going over to the UK and eventually getting married, which didn't work out, and I didn't bring any of my guitar stuff with me really, and ended up pretty much putting it down for maybe 10, 15 years or more.
Really?
Whoa, that's a long time, man.
Yeah, it was. And anyway, that ended badly, so that's a whole nother story. We'd need a couple of bottles of booze to talk about. But got out of that and wanted to get some of my life back. And I thought, shit, I don't even have a guitar anymore. And I was old enough where I wanted a nice guitar by then, but I was also poor enough where I couldn't really afford one. So I saw a busted up old Telecaster on eBay. It was all smashed up. I think actually that one was, well, no, I take it back. So the first one was a smashed up Parker Fly.
Oh,
so
geez.
It was one of the original Parker Flies, and I just thought it was the coolest looking thing ever.
Aren't they made out of carbon or something real lightweight?
Yeah, they're basswood, and they've got a carbon fiber skin, kind of fiberglass onto the wood, And it had and they have a really funky headstock. It's just like a little stick coming out at an angle.
Yeah.
There's not much to it. And it's all carbon fibered. And this thing was busted up and the headstock was snapped off. So it was really cheap. And so I thought I'd try and fix it.
Make a Steinberger out of that.
Yeah, I probably could have.
Those are really big when they came out, man. I remember those.
They are cool guitars. I mean, they're really nice guitars. Mm-hmm. And they're really comfortable, and they sound great, and they weigh about 3 pounds.
Yeah.
But they play awesome. I think they're pretty expensive when they first came out.
They still. I mean, they're cheaper now, but they're awfully. From what I understand, I'm not a Parker aficionado, but from what I understand, and maybe I've understood this from listening to watching Dave's World of Fun stuff on YouTube. I want to have him on someday. I don't know if you've ever watched him, but he's pretty entertaining. YouTube, he's from Canada, and every time he gets a Parker in, it's just like his worst day. And it's all parts that only go on a Parker. Right, so it's like
they're all custom made.
Yeah. So anyhow, so you had the Parker, and then what happened?
Yeah, so I fixed it up, and I did a good enough job at it that somebody saw it and wanted to buy it from me, and I thought, okay, and I made a little money, so I bought another busted up guitar, and I thought I still need a guitar, and I did that one up. Somebody bought that, and I did that 3 or 4 times, and I thought, well, geez, something's going on here, and I started, I got a couple of parts. I got a neck from Music Craft, and I did a little telly body, and just kind of tried to customize it. Started learning, did 1 or 2 of those, and messed around with spraying. And I thought, well, shoot, I didn't like. The necks weren't that great that I was fun. Even, the nicer necks, they weren't super. And I wanted to customize it, and I figured I may as well just start doing it from scratch. And so. That's
cool.
So I did.
Did you have somebody that you were looking to sort of maybe as some sort of mentor or something, or were you just winging it?
I was kind of just winging it. I liked the classic stuff, but, and I'd had enough guitars that I knew that, most of the guitars that anybody sees out there are
your common guitars.
Yeah. And they're a lot of them they're made in a factory. And unless you have a really good tech or somebody who can go over it and really make it really playable and, really make it what it should be, that they have a lot of little problems and stuff. And there's a lot of stuff I just didn't like. And I wanted to, try and make it a little bit better and make it, polish all those little inside corners that nobody ever sees, and, make it into something that.
Going the extra mile.
Yeah. I mean, really turn into something special.
So you've got a pretty good start. You've had a lot of guitars. You've got a great background, and now you're getting to the point where you are trying to figure out, okay, how do I like doing this, but does it suddenly become a career choice, or like what's the move here? Well,
kind of when I got to the point where I wanted to do them from scratch, and I started doing a little bit more design stuff and buying enough tools, I said I'm going to do the first batch, and these are going to be my guitars. These first ones I called Red Rocket, so I thought about it. I was in advertising and design for quite a while by then. I thought, I'm going to do this, they're going to be mine. I'm going to create a brand. I'm going to, have an identity, and it's going to be me. And my name, Matt Nowicki, is, there's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't roll off the tongue. And so, and I didn't really want to call them Nowicki guitars, just, just for the sake of not bothering, just everybody kind of just slaps their last name on it, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I just didn't want to do that. And, I love the just the hot rod, the coolness, the fun side of guitars. And, some of the funky, crazy stuff that they were doing, like the crazy Italian nonsense that was going on in the 60s, the crazy guitars that were, just 10 pickups and,
like Echo is one of those ones that is like, just like, wow, okay.
Just for fun. I mean, there's no reason for it other than it's crazy and fun, and it's, I thought that's cool. It's just, if you're going to do it, have fun with it. I didn't want to do ultra serious, just studies and replicas of stuff. That just didn't interest me at all. So, I love, and I'd always been working with my hands. I love working with wood, and I love, I think wood is just, it can be really beautiful, and just wanted to bring all those kind of things out if I could. Anyway, so I built a series of 4 to start with, and I did I got into the I loved illustration too. So I was in art school. I loved illustration, and I loved the crazy old pulp magazines. When they did those all those pulp magazines, the crazy horror stuff and the sci-fi, those covers. Somebody did those as a painting. They were all illustrations, and some of them are gorgeous. I mean, they're really cool. Somebody really knew what they were doing, but they're insane. They were 10-armed tentacle monsters, on the surface of the moon with this, gorgeous blonde in a bikini and a spacesuit.
That's why we all liked it. I mean,
right, and they're just crazy and fun. And I love that too. So
you have that on your neck plates. Is that correct?
Right, right.
That's
so
cool.
those kind of I grabbed that Red Rocket name from that, and I put those on the neck plates and that kind of thing, just to, I wanted to make it fun. That was the big thing. I didn't want it to be, just a lot. There's so many that, people are obviously trying to make something that has already been done. Yeah. And do it exactly correct. And they get deadly serious about it. It's like, is it the exact same plastic in the pickup ring as the model that was done in 1957? And thinking like,
oh yeah,
and which is fine if you're into that. And I just wasn't into that. So I wanted to have fun, and I wanted to be fun. I wanted to, like you're saying with the sparkles, just to grab, make you look at it and then like, whoa, and look back and
my eyes like the sparkle.
Different.
I mean, people like it.
Right.
You look at it because it's attractive.
Right. And do the same, I wanted to do the same thing with the shapes and, tweak the shapes a little bit. Like I do a model that's obviously, kind of an offset inspired, Jazzmaster inspired type of shape. Yeah. And I love that shape, but the more I looked at it, the more I didn't like, it just the shape just didn't flow to me. And, so I messed with that and just give it something that just looked the way I thought it should look, and, things like that. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so I
slightly exaggerated.
Yeah.
Just enough, not to where it looks like
you did it wrong.
You did it wrong, or I think I've likened it to the pick your auto parts store, but when somebody gets a car and then they go in and they just go down the accessory aisle and say, I'll take it all. Right. There are some guitars that kind of look like that, and you're like, why didn't you just have just stop?
Just a couple less. Yeah. I didn't want to make it just different for the sake of being different. I wanted to make it, the way I thought it should look.
Yeah.
So. But anyway, so I did a batch of 4 to start with, and and I just kind of didn't really do. I put up a little bitty website, and I, did a post on the gear page, and forum board, and said, "Hey, I'm out here, and here's a couple guitars I've got to sell. Does anybody like them?" And within like 2 days, they bought them, and I got a really good response. And I thought, "Oh, okay, cool."
Nice.
I was charging way not enough money for it, but and they were nice, and people really liked him, and they said nice things about him. And I actually got, a good few people just getting in touch out of nowhere and saying, "Can you make me a guitar?" And, within a month or two, I had about 15 orders, which,
wow,
I couldn't really handle at the time, but, and I just started doing it and learning by screwing up and trying to do it better.
Yeah, I have the same experience myself with what I do, but it's funny when you first start out and then people learn what you do, and it just blows up, in a good way.
Yeah.
And
Jared makes pickups just so.
Oh, cool.
We're.
Oh yeah, I didn't know if you knew that or not, but
I didn't know.
But yeah, that's how I kind of got going too. You just trial and error, and you get eventually you just get more stuff in your shop, and you're taking more orders, and I really admire the way what your concept is you want to make it fun. You don't want to get stuck in the old vintage ways, and I really admire that because.
Well, thanks.
But they're tied closely enough.
Yeah,
but that's a
right
really tough line to walk. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I was like, I want to learn more about what you're doing, because
they're in the pocket.
Yeah, you tend to either just see like, I've seen that guitar 1,000 times. Why did you even bother making that?
Right.
Or like you were mentioning, like, well, that's just crazy. Why did you do that?
Right.
So, finding your own little signature again, which I think, Jared alluded to earlier, but let's talk about some of those choices that you're making now, actually, because that's a rich area for us. It's at least most accessible for anyone that doesn't know a lot about your guitars. I think there's a handful of things that you clearly have said, this is probably going to be on a Red Rocket.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I love so I started out doing kind of the telly shape. That was my first kind of entry into it, but I didn't want to just do, a telly is a pretty simple guitar. It's basically a slab of wood with a neck bolted on, and you can, which is great, but it's been done, that's how it started. And there's no shortage of standard tellies out there, but I still love the shape, and it's cool and it's classic. And I hadn't seen hardly any, there are not that many tellies with binding, and there's certainly not that many tellies with the purfling and stuff on there as well.
And what is that?
Well, like the binding would be like the outer layer on the edge, and the purfling is usually that decorative, like the herringbone.
Yes. Okay.
On the inside.
I didn't know that had a name. I thought that was just.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, that's called purfling. So the outer edge is the binding, and
gotcha.
Anything on the inside is the purfling.
Well, you do like the purfling, don't you?
I do.
Oh yeah, I've seen that on most of your models here.
Yeah, I do. I try to, and it's pretty much, unless somebody says I don't want it, I try to put it on there just because it's kind of a signature thing at this point. And it's, I get it made. You can't get it anywhere else. You can go make it yourself if you want, but it's not something that's available. I have it custom made, and so I started out doing that, and that was a real conscious thing to, basically, do the emerald thing, kick it up a notch, and just really do something where instead of people just seeing another telly, they think, oh, what's that little something going on there? That's kind of cool, and And so that it just, and the same thing with the neck plates. I made a point of, I think there's 5 different designs, that I've taken from old pulp covers, and just little things like that, you obviously don't have to do. And it's not really, it's not going to change the sound of the guitar. It's not, but it's just something that makes it a little bit more unique. And it's something that really turns me on.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Cool. I think another choice, and Jared is going to have dreams about this. I'm sure he already has, but you are not afraid of the flake.
I love it.
Which is awesome. I mean, it's one of those things you look at it.
Embrace the flake.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Someday I will have I think I would love to have either and or maybe and or an orange flake, not speedboat flake. I think your flake is a little bit more. I can manage that a little bit. I can get with that.
Smaller.
Jared likes
big, gaudy, fat,
crouton size flex. But I
those
think
are fun. They're hard to do, but those are cool.
I think a root beer color would look like a root beer burst sparkle. Sure. Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
I think I've done one of those.
Really?
I've done kind of a root beer one. I have to find a picture of that.
I got to tell you, the first time I saw one of those real super heavy flake guitars that turned me on to these was G.E. Smith playing one. You get a real small snippet of him playing the guitar on Saturday Night Live before they go to commercial in the mid to late 90s. And he always had some sort of awesome fancy guitar, and he had a purple something or other, and it had that. Ever since then, I've always had an eye for the flake.
Yeah, it's cool. It's fun. That's the thing. I mean, guitars are, pretty.
They're art, man.
They are. They're out there. It's not like a cello, or a violin. I mean, to somebody who doesn't know the difference between, two, types of violin. I mean, all violins look the same, but I mean, guitars are crazy.
Yeah. But rock and roll is too. So that's, I mean, it's like, that's the whole point. Yeah.
If you're going to do it, go big,
Right.
So it's, make it fun, put it out there. So
I'm going to call out one in particular, and this might get us into a few other things, but the Atomic. I'm looking at you have a Atomic black and gold. So I just got a guitar that I'm kind of dusting up a little bit, and I put a gold picker on it that Tony from Tony the Pick Guardian, who's our brand new episode number 39. Go listen to it now.
Good dude.
He built me a real nice one, and I'm looking at I just picked this up. See, I always find something new when I'm looking at one of your guitars. You've got a tortoise binding and what's it called again?
Purfling.
Sure.
So you've got what looks like you got mahogany body,
right?
A tortoise binding, and an antique cream and black Perfla with a black top and a gold sparkle pickguard. Now that sounds like a terrible salad to eat, but it is. This is a delicious looking guitar. I'm telling you, this thing is badass. I love it.
Yeah, and it's got a Claro walnut neck, which sounds awesome. You don't think of that, and it's got and don't forget the titanium saddle.
Yeah, so, you have a couple here with I would say medium dark wood necks, and I'm just curious, why do you think we don't see that more on guitars? I have it on my Godin, and I love it.
What it is, honestly, is, and I cannot even begin to tell you how many times it's happened, but people have contacted me, and I get people contacting all the time. They want to talk about maybe doing a guitar. And about one in 5 or 1 in 10, I'll actually kind of get through to the end and actually order. But I don't mind. It's loads of fun chatting about guitars with people and trying to figure out fun ideas. And, sometimes I kind of steal their ideas, but a lot of the times they will, they'll contact me and say, I want something really cool, really out there. And, and a lot, by the time we get down to final specs, it's pretty classic stuff. A lot of times, they just don't want to go beyond what they've seen before. So there's even like the wood choices. And, to have a mahogany neck on a telly is just like, why would you, you don't do that. And so
I say you do it. It's great.
Well, and that's what I say too.
Absolutely.
I try all kinds, that's what I like doing, that kind of thing, and trying different things. And sometimes it doesn't work awesome, but sometimes it does. That particular one, I remember that neck. Well, it sounded good.
Yeah.
It really sounded good. And I think a little bit of experimentation is, well, it works.
You know what's strange, and I've mentioned this before, but I think for as crazy as we think rock and roll is, or blues, or what, just the whole idea of this of having a little bit of your own your own jam or your own vibe in your guitar.
Yeah,
guitars are relatively tame compared to jazz bass guitars, which are like, those are bonkers. Like they're like, I'm gonna need at least 8 different woods in this. I was like, what?
And 10 strings. Yeah.
So that said, see, I just did it. I gotta stop saying that.
That said,
okay. Moving
well, the
on.
bass player is always in the back anyway. I mean, who's looking at their guitar?
Oh man, you better apologize to every bass player that's listening.
Well, I'm sorry. There are some crazy bass guitars.
Yeah, man. We had Tim Sizer from Lowdown Bass, who's a Chicago kid. Yeah, he's making them in his condo. It's crazy, and the stuff that he does is amazing.
I started doing it. That's how I started. I was in the second floor of a 3-story apartment building, and my neighbors hated me. God, they hated me.
Yeah.
And so I would do my woodworking at the kitchen table, and I had a spray set up with my compressor and everything out on the little walkout porch,
Yeah.
Where the grill was supposed to be, right?
Yeah. And so I tried to time it when not that many people were around. I'd spray my clear coat and everything. And
you do have one of the nicer clear coats out there, I must say, or at least whoever's taking these photos are doing a dang good job.
They're better now that I'm not doing it in the apartment building.
Yeah. So I think where I was trying to go with the jazz thing was you're taking an interest in unique woods, but you're not wielding that without a lot of thought. I guess the idea when we hear some like, I live out in the rural area and on the eastern seaboard, it's like, okay, is that where all of the amazing wood is? Is that like actually a thing? Are you surrounded? No, is like the guy down next to you, like down the road, selling exotic woods or something?
No, unfortunately not. No.
Okay.
No, I've got to travel for it. So I buy some stuff, on the internet when I see something really special. And there is actually one really good lumber yard that I travel to that has some really nice stuff.
Yeah.
But you just got to kind of find it where you can,
Yeah. So. Well, it's hard to introduce those kind of things and still keep sort of, I guess what we would call a classic look to it.
Right.
I think your Rocket Master, you had a Burst Rocket Master and a Bird's Eye Esquire, and that's probably about as nutty as you can get without starting to get without losing that sort of classic feel to it, where it's almost too progressive. I think another thing that I really like, you, at least on most of the guitars that I've seen, you are not doing a full body. You're letting the wood do its thing, but you're making the tops sort of their own deal. Which is,
I mean, if there's some nice wood, I try to show it off a little bit. I mean, I love cool colors too. I love the cool pastels and stuff that are kind of.
I like that pop bottle green.
Yeah.
I think you also bravely, if someone said, "Oh, you should check out this pink sparkle guitar," I'd be like,
"Hey,
nope." But
it takes a real man to play a pink sparkly guitar.
I mean, so I was watching one of the YouTube videos, and I was just like, "Wow, okay, that is a stellar looking guitar."
You know, the reason I kind of like those is I went to NAMM for the first time in, I think it was summer 2015 in Nashville, and you know, the Premier Guitar does a cover on it every year, and I got the cover. So they put that. I had a pink sparkle Rocket Master.
Yeah, and
it was the NAMM cover. So I thought that was cool. So
you had a tortoise guard on that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that was really a special looking guitar. Can you tell us a little bit about, like, what are some of the hard things that you've encountered in doing this, or places where you've hit your limit, or kind of dive into any of that?
Well, you know, like I said, I mean, I love to make them look cool, but if they don't sound good and they don't really play well, you know, it's disappointing. Somebody will pick it up and think it should play like this, or you know, it should sound like this, and if it doesn't, you know, it's disappointing. It's not good enough that it just kind of looks good. And so I started getting into, you know, I can play okay, you know, when I want to, but I'm not by any means a really stellar player. Somebody who, you know, who'll be playing 3, 4, 5 hours a day at, you know, a serious,
right.
Somebody who really, you know, knows what they're doing, how to get the best sound out of an instrument. And, you know, so I started trying to get these into those kind of hands and really listen to what they were talking about. And listening to them play, you know, it made me look at the guitars in a totally different way, and little tiny details that I just never would have thought about. You know, just I started getting into, and you can get crazy with it. I mean, have you heard of a Plek machine?
I think I have. Don't they?
Yeah.
Don't they just do all the setup basically?
Well, you strap the guitar.
It's like a chiropractor for the guitar, right?
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because you strap the guitar in there and a little sensor. You have it strung up under tension, you know, up to tune. So the neck is, you know, it's got enough tension, so the neck is bending a little bit, and so it'll take a reading to a 10,000th of a millimeter, not an inch, 10,000th of a millimeter. Jeez. Of where exactly each one of those frets is sitting and how much pressure the strings are pulling on the neck. And it'll read that and analyze that and, you know, kind of see where it should be against an ideal curvature of the neck to make sure every note kind of rings out the way it should.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then it'll go back with this tiny little grinding wheel after you take the strings off it, and it remembers where the frets were under tension and adjusts every single fret and every part of where a string would touch that fret to the ideal height. You know, it'll take it down 3 10,000ths of a millimeter, you know, and there's one little spot. And I thought, oh, come on, you know, the way, you know, your hands are always moving the neck, the way you're, you know, kind of manhandling a guitar, and the neck will move a little bit in the strings, and you're bending the strings, and there's different pressures. You can't, you know, you can get crazy with it. And I didn't really believe it. And I had a guitar, you know, plecked and run through this machine. And when it came out and I thought it was pretty good. I thought it sounded pretty good and played really well. And when it came out, you know, it was better with a capital B. And it's just that kind of thing where you can just keep trying to get that extra little step. And it makes a difference. Just those little tiny, 10,000ths of a millimeter here and there makes a difference. It really does.
Do you run all of them through that?
Sometimes I do it sometimes, but what I did is I used that, and there's a it's kind of like the manual version of doing it. There's a special jig that you can make. Not make, but is made, and you can use. You strap your neck into it and put it under tension. You can do it by hand. You have a feeler gauge down to 10,000ths of an inch, and you can't get it quite as good as a Plek would, but it's pretty damn close. But what that did was really make me aware that most guitars and most factory stuff, they mill the neck down flat and put the frets in, kind of level the frets if you're lucky. Most of the time they don't even do that. They just put the frets in and slap it on the guitar and string it up.
Jerks.
And you're good to go. Well, and that's what you have to do if you want to sell a $300, $500 guitar. You can't spend 10, 15, 20 hours, on a neck and sell it for $300. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
And and that's fine. If you get it, if it's factory done, you get it set up and it's working and it sounds 90%, then that's cool for $300. I mean, that's not bad.
Yeah.
But, when you get to a point where, people are really serious about their playing and they just really want it to sparkle, you start looking at stuff like that. And that's what I did. I'd started talking to a lot of different luthiers and people I respect who've been around, and just trying to get those couple little secrets that, take 20, 30 years to learn. It's things like that. And and things that I do some stuff now that, definitely makes it harder for myself, but I just, I like it. I'd made about 100, 150 guitars, and every year, I'd get, 2 or 3 would come back, and for things like, when it gets real dry in the winter and the neck shrink up a little bit and the frets start to poke out the sides, which is a normal thing if you don't humidify it, but it's annoying, and people don't, it messes up your playing, and it's unpleasant, and it, I want to tell them, I want to tell the customers, just use a humidifier and take better care of your guitar, but you can't really do that. So you gotta fix it and make it right. And, but it's a pain in the neck. And so what I started doing is, like on a guitar with binding on the neck, those fret ends are covered up by the binding, right?
Yeah.
And they don't ever stick out. They're never going to poke you. And so what I did was I figured out a way to make my fret slots so they don't actually break through the sides. So it's like a little pocket.
Oh.
And you got to cut the tang on the fret, and it takes about 10 times as long. But that'll never happen. The fret ends will never poke out, and
Nice.
And it looks nice, and it feels nice, and so. Wow. That's the kind of thing, things that, when you pick it up, you don't necessarily notice. You just notice, wow, this really feels good, and it plays good, and it really sounds good. And, and that's what I want.
You mentioned, sorry, let me get back on mic. You mentioned right when we started that you were working on, you're designing a new guitar, which, it piqued my interest because I was like, well, how do you go about doing that? I mean, now that I know that, you've got an art background, so is it pad and pencil? Is it roughing out do you use clay? I mean, what do you do? Popsicle sticks? I don't know.
Play-Doh.
I mean, some of it's a little sketchy stuff, and eventually, just because it's real easy and it's what I know, is I get into Adobe Illustrator.
Yeah.
And it's real easy to tweak a curve by a thousands bit here and there, and see 2 or 3 or 4 different versions right next to each other, and see which one looks better. And
it is crazy how much a curve, like, just the subtlety of getting a curve right or wrong can absolutely make or break a guitar.
It really can, and I started, what got my eye into that, I actually, when I was in school, art school, I did ceramics, I did sculpture and stuff, but a lot of it was, pottery. And so when you're sitting there at the wheel and you're doing 10 or 15 or 20 bowls or cups or something, and just the tiniest little variation of the curve, and your eye starts to really look at that, and you can see 1 out of that 10 is a real winner, and it just looks good, and everybody thinks it looks great, and you really like it, and you start to figure out where, why does it look good? And it's that little bit of a belly to the curve, and it's just a little bit of something that just really works.
Yeah. And, well, I certainly appreciate that. I'm looking at the classic Afterburner, and that is a guitar that is teetering on nope. And let me qualify that, okay? Because of what you just said. If the waist of that guitar, and I would say the waist, and if there's an actual term, please tell me it. Between the pickups, where it's the most narrow, it looks like a waist. Looks like a human waist.
Yeah.
If that was like an 1/8 of an inch narrower, the whole thing would just look wacky.
Right.
At least to me, right? And you've clearly said, I don't want this to look like a normal Les Paul.
Right.
I want it to have some, and it's so interesting to look at. And then even up on the top, I guess your shoulder, in the line that you carry over from the top of the shoulder into the bottom horn is so subtle, but it is so pleasing to look at. And I commend you for that.
And things like you don't even really notice, but if you look at that waist, it's slightly offset. Like the left side is down a little bit.
Just a touch, yep.
Yeah. And just to give it that little bit of a...
Sorry, no royalties. I won't. I think one more thing that I'll point out, and this must have been, I would imagine this would have been a challenge the first time you said, all right, I'm going to do a semi-hollow. Okay. So let's talk about F-holes or sound holes, these aren't F-holes. So in the world of guitars, that is absolutely a signature. So it must have been nice to land on something that didn't look ridiculous, that actually looks really awesome, that's pretty ownable.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to do an F-hole, and this new one I'm doing now is going to have kind of a variation of an F-hole as an option. So I figured I may as well, I've never done one, so I could do an F-hole just to be different. So.
Do a capital F-hole. See how that works out.
There it is.
All right, man. Well, hey, this was just so much fun talking about. I love hearing the backstory on all this stuff, and I know that we could go on and on and on. So maybe we'll get you back after you finish that new model.
Yeah, I'll send one for you guys to play with.
Oh my gosh, are you don't play with me like that. That
for
is
real.
cruel and unusual.
If you
for
want
real?
to, I could.
Oh man, are you kidding me? I would love that.
Yeah, for
Me
sure.
too.
Yeah, and then we'll have you back on. You can tell us all about it. Okay.
And send us a Buckeye Burrow commander.
Wait, now don't get all greedy. He's making like.
Well, come on, we're in Ohio, Buckeye. Come on, make the connection.
All right, now is when we are going to segue even into our happy fun time segment at the end for Would You Rather. Jared.
Would you rather have a Fender Cabernita or an Esquire? Cabernita has a 2 TV Jones neck and bridge. The Esquire has the one bridge pickup. And let's make it fair and say that they have the same value. So if you had to pick one or the other, which one would you choose? What would you rather have?
Honestly, I'd have to say the Esquire. Just for
Okay, so that threw me for a loop because you put TV Jones in like almost all of your guitars.
I do, and I like them.
Yeah,
and I'm
good
thinking,
company.
I've got a bunch of those that are like
okay,
so
that's good.
Yeah.
All right.
So the history of it's pretty cool. So
Keep it simple.
I'd go for the Esquire. just for the sake of it, just to have something.
It's the first broadsword of
It
guitar.
really is. Yeah. It really is.
Jared?
So
Well, so I would go for the Cabernita. I mean,
they sound good. It's a nice sounding combination.
Todd, what would you rather have, man?
I love a Telly, and I love the brutality of a Telly. So I'm going Esquire.
Not bad.
I'm not a finesse player.
Plug it in and go, man.
I'd like to be, but anyways, cool. All right, that was super fun. Thank you, Matt, so much for spending your time with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
You better believe it.
It was fun.
We'll talk to you sometime in the near future. And where can they find you? Where can our people find you?
You can find, if you just do a search for Red Rocket Guitars, most of my stuff will come up. So it's redrocketguitars.com. If you do Red Rocket Guitars on Instagram or Facebook, you should find me.
Cool.
And and I got a contact page on the site. So feel free to get in touch. And there you go. We can talk about guitars.
The birds want to jump in too.
Oh yeah,
I know.
They see the sparkle.
My dogs were losing their minds.
Oh, yeah, all right.
Ignored, so
no problem.
I better go outside before they explode. So,
all right, Matt. Thanks again.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
You didn't do the subscribe.
Subscribe.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit us at our website at theguitarknobs.com for episodes, news, and guest profiles. You can get all social with us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/guitarknobs. Give us a tweet at guitar_knobs. And check out our gallery on Instagram at guitarknobs.